The dust from the approaching train swirled like golden specters in the late afternoon sun as Charlotte Kincaid clutched her worn leather suitcase, her knuckles white with anticipation. The year was 1878, and Tucson Station represented her last hope in a world that had taken everything from her. Charlotte dabbed at her forehead with a handkerchief, the Arizona Territory heat relentless even as the sun began its descent. She had been waiting for nearly 3 hours, the final passenger from the eastbound train still lingering on the wooden platform. The station master had given her pitying glances before retiring to his office, leaving her alone with nothing but the distant howl of coyotes and the occasional tumbling sagebrush. "Train to Santa Fe's been delayed again, miss," the station master had informed her earlier. "Won't be another one until Thursday now." Thursday was 4 days away, and Charlotte had exactly 18 cents to her name. The boarding house had made it clear she couldn't stay another night without payment. She had sold her mother's silver brooch 2 weeks ago to afford the journey west, answering an advertisement for a schoolteacher position that had dissolved into nothing upon her arrival. The telegram had been a cruel hoax, she realized too late. Charlotte closed her eyes, fighting back tears. At 22, she had buried both parents within a year, her father to consumption and her mother to grief shortly after. The family farm in Missouri had been seized for unpaid debts, leaving her with nothing but a suitcase of clothes and dreams that now seemed as barren as the desert surrounding her. The creak of boots on wooden planks made her eyes snap open. A tall figure approached from the far end of the platform, silhouetted against the setting sun. As he drew closer, Charlotte could make out a dusty Stetson hat pulled low, a weathered face with several days' worth of stubble, and eyes the color of the Arizona sky. "Madam," he said, tipping his hat. "You've been sitting here since I rode through town this morning." Charlotte straightened her back, clinging to what little dignity she had left. "I'm waiting for the train to Santa Fe." "That train ain't coming until Thursday," he replied, his voice deep but gentle. "You got somewhere to stay until then?" She hesitated, unwilling to admit her desperate circumstances to a stranger. "I'll manage, thank you." The man shifted his weight, studying her face. "Name's Xavier McCallister. Most folks call me Zav. I run the Doublem ranch about 10 miles north of here." "Charlotte Kincaid," she replied, offering a small nod but no hand. Her mother had warned her about speaking to strange men, especially in territories as lawless as Arizona. Xavier seemed to sense her caution. He maintained a respectful distance as he continued, "Mrs. Holloway at the boarding house mentioned you might be in a tight spot, said you came for a teaching job that wasn't real." Charlotte's cheeks burned with embarrassment. "News travels fast in small towns, I see." "That it does," Xavier agreed. "Look, Miss Kincaid, I ain't one to meddle, but I can't in good conscience leave a lady stranded at a train station with night coming on. My sister Bethany works as a cook at my ranch. We've been looking for someone with education to teach the children of my ranch hands and some of the neighboring homesteaders. It's not much, but it's honest work with room and board." Charlotte eyed him suspiciously. "Why would you offer employment to a woman you've just met?" Xavier removed his hat, revealing thick dark hair with strands of premature silver at the temples. "Because I know what it's like to have nowhere to go. 10 years ago, I arrived here with nothing but the clothes on my back and a handful of dreams that seemed impossible. Someone gave me a chance then. Seems only right to do the same." He extended his hand, calloused and strong. "I'm not asking you to decide your whole future right now, just offering you a place to stay until that train comes on Thursday. If you decide the teaching position suits you, all the better. If not, I'll personally see you onto that train to Santa Fe with enough money for a fresh start." Charlotte stared at his outstretched hand. Every instinct told her to be wary, yet something in his honest gaze made her reach out and place her gloved fingers in his palm. "Thank you, Mr. McCallister," she said softly, feeling the warmth of his grip through the thin fabric of her glove. "Zav," he corrected, picking up her suitcase. Mr. McCallister was my father, God rest his soul. He helped her onto his wagon, which was parked at the edge of the station. As they pulled away, Charlotte cast one last glance at the empty train platform, wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her life, or finding the beginning of something she never knew she needed. The journey to Doublem Ranch took nearly 2 hours, with Xavier pointing out landmarks along the way. He spoke of his cattle operation, the struggles of ranching in such unforgiving terrain, and his hopes for expanding his modest empire. Charlotte found herself captivated by his passion and knowledge. "What brought you west, Mr. McCallister Xav?" she asked as the wagon bounced over a particularly rough patch of road. "The war," he replied simply. "After Appomattox, there wasn't much left for me back in Virginia. My family lost everything. I was 20 then, still believing I could conquer the world." "And have you? Conquered it, I mean," Xavier chuckled, a warm sound that seemed to chase away the evening chill. "Hardly, but I've carved out my piece of it. That's all any of us can hope for, I reckon." As twilight deepened into darkness, Charlotte caught her first glimpse of Doublem Ranch. Nestled in a valley between two rocky ridges, the main house stood as a beacon of civilization in the wilderness, its windows glowing with welcoming lamplight. Several smaller cabins dotted the property, along with a large barn and corral. "It's lovely," Charlotte remarked, genuinely surprised by the neat, established appearance of the ranch. "It's home," Xavier replied, pride evident in his voice. "Took 8 years of back-breaking work to get it looking this way." He helped her down from the wagon in front of the main house, a 2-story structure built of sturdy pine logs with a wide porch wrapping around 3 sides. The door flew open before they reached it, and a plump woman with graying hair pulled into a tight bun stepped out. "Xavier McCallister, I expected you hours ago. The stew's gone cold twice over," she scolded, though her tone held more concern than anger. "Sorry, Bethany," Xavier replied, guiding Charlotte forward. "I found someone who might be interested in the teaching position. Miss Charlotte Kincaid, this is my sister, Bethany McCallister." Bethany's face transformed from concern to delight. "Oh, well, that changes everything. Come in, come in." "You must be exhausted, poor dear. Let me show you to a room, and then we'll get some food in you." Charlotte was ushered into a surprisingly comfortable bedroom on the 2nd floor. The furnishings were simple but clean, with fresh linens on the bed and a small vase of wildflowers on the dresser. After washing up, she joined Xavier and Bethany in the dining room, where she was served a hearty beef stew with freshly baked bread. "Tomorrow, I'll introduce you to the children," Bethany said enthusiastically. 5 of them altogether, ranging from 6 to 12. Bright youngsters, all of them, but in desperate need of proper schooling. "I should mention, Miss Kincaid is only staying until Thursday," Xavier interjected, giving Charlotte a reassuring look. "She's got plans to continue to Santa Fe." Bethany's face fell slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Well, 3 days is better than none, and who knows, maybe you'll find you like it here." After dinner, Charlotte excused herself, pleading exhaustion from her travels. In the privacy of her room, she sat on the edge of the bed, contemplating her situation. The McCallisters seemed kind and genuine, the ranch prosperous and well kept. The teaching position would provide stability and purpose, things she had been seeking since losing her parents. Yet Santa Fe had been her destination from the beginning. Her mother's cousin lived there, the only family Charlotte had left. The woman had written after her mother's death, offering condolences but no invitation to visit. Still, it was the closest thing to a plan Charlotte had managed to formulate. Sleep came fitfully that night, her dreams filled with trains that never arrived and stations where she waited endlessly alone. The following morning, Charlotte was awakened by sunlight streaming through curtains she had forgotten to close. For a moment, disorientation gripped her before the events of the previous day came flooding back. She dressed quickly in one of her 2 remaining clean dresses, a modest blue cotton garment with white piping, and made her way downstairs. The house was empty, but a note on the kitchen table directed her to the small building behind the main house. Following the instructions, Charlotte discovered a converted storage shed that had been transformed into a rudimentary schoolroom. 5 wooden desks faced a larger teacher's desk, and a blackboard hung on the far wall. Inside, the children were already seated, with Bethany attempting to maintain order. The children fell silent as Charlotte entered, 5 pairs of curious eyes studying her intently. "Children, this is Miss Kincaid," Bethany announced. "She's going to be your teacher for a few days. I expect you to show her the same respect you'd show me or Mr. McCallister." After brief introductions, Bethany left Charlotte alone with her new pupils. Despite her nervousness, Charlotte found herself falling naturally into the role of teacher. By midday, she had assessed each child's abilities and begun organizing lessons appropriate to their levels. When the children were dismissed for the afternoon, Charlotte remained in the schoolroom, making notes and planning the next day's instruction. She was so absorbed in her task that she didn't hear Xavier enter until he cleared his throat. "They seem to like you," he observed, leaning against the doorframe. Charlotte looked up, startled. "They're bright children. It's a shame they haven't had consistent schooling." "Most folks out here prioritize survival over education," Xavier replied, stepping into the room. "But I've always believed knowledge is its own kind of survival skill." "That's a progressive view for a rancher," Charlotte noted, setting down her pencil. Xavier smiled, the expression transforming his weathered face. "Don't let the hat and boots fool you, Miss Kincaid. I attended 2 years at William and Mary before the war interrupted my education." Charlotte found herself revising her impression of the rugged rancher. "You're full of surprises, Mr. McCallister." "Xav," he reminded her, then added, "I thought you might like to see more of the ranch this afternoon. If you're to consider staying beyond Thursday, you should know what you're getting into." Charlotte hesitated only briefly before accepting. "I'd like that very much." Xavier showed her the operations of Doublem Ranch with evident pride. The cattle herd, nearly 500 strong, grazed in the valley pastures. A dozen cowboys, most of them former soldiers like Xavier, managed the herd and kept watch for rustlers and predators. "The railroads changed everything," Xavier explained as they rode side by side, Charlotte on a gentle mare named Daisy. "Before the tracks reached Tucson, we drove cattle hundreds of miles to market. Now we can load them onto stock cars and reach buyers in half the time." "It seems you've built quite a life here," Charlotte observed, impressed by the scope of his achievement. "It's a good life, but a lonely one at times," Xavier admitted, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Bethany keeps the house running, but she's talking about marrying the blacksmith in town come spring." They rode in companionable silence for a while, the only sounds the creak of saddle leather and the distant lowing of cattle. Charlotte found herself relaxing in Xavier's company, drawn to his quiet strength and thoughtfulness. As the sun began to set, they turned back toward the ranch house. "Will you stay? Beyond Thursday, I mean," Xavier asked suddenly. Charlotte considered the question carefully. "I don't know yet. I had my heart set on Santa Fe, but perhaps I was running toward something simply because it was the only direction I could think to go," she finished softly. Xavier nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Sometimes the best destinations are the ones we never plan to find." The next 2 days fell into a pleasant rhythm. Charlotte taught the children in the mornings and early afternoons, then spent the remainder of each day exploring the ranch with Xavier or helping Bethany with household tasks. The more time she spent at Doublem, the more at home she felt. On Wednesday evening, the night before the train to Santa Fe was due to arrive, Xavier found Charlotte sitting on the porch swing, gazing at the stars that blanketed the desert sky. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, gesturing to the empty space beside her. "Please," she replied, moving slightly to make room. Xavier settled beside her, the swing creaking gently under their combined weight. "Have you decided? About tomorrow?" Charlotte sighed. "I've been thinking about it all day. The teaching position is wonderful and you've all been so kind, but..." But you're still not sure if this is where you're meant to be, Xavier finished for her. Yes, she whispered. How did you know? Xavier turned to face her, his expression serious in the moonlight. Because I felt the same way my first years here. Always wondering if I should have gone to California or up to Montana instead. Always questioning if I'd made the right choice. What changed? I stopped looking at the horizon and started seeing what was right in front of me, he replied. This land, harsh as it is, has a beauty that gets under your skin. The people here become family, not just neighbors, and eventually I realized I wasn't wondering anymore I was home. Charlotte felt tears welling in her eyes. I haven't had a home since my parents died. I'm not sure I remember how it feels. With gentle fingers, Xavier wiped away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. Stay, Charlotte, not just for the children or the teaching position. Stay because in just 3 days you've brought something to this ranch to me that I didn't even know was missing. The honesty in his voice made her breath catch. What if I'm not what you think I am? What if I disappoint you? What if you don't? He countered softly. What if this is exactly where you're supposed to be? Before she could respond, Xavier leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss so tender it made her heart ache. When he pulled away, Charlotte found herself reaching for him, unwilling to break the connection between them. I know it's fast, Xavier murmured, taking her hands in his. And if you need time, I'll wait. I'll even take you to the station tomorrow and put you on that train if that's what you truly want, but I think we both feel something here worth exploring. Charlotte looked into his eyes, seeing hope and vulnerability there. This man who had built an empire from nothing was laying his heart bare before her. In that moment, she knew her decision had already been made. I'll stay, she whispered, squeezing his hands. Not forever, not yet. But long enough to see where this leads. Xavier's smile was brighter than all the stars above them. That's all I'm asking for. Thursday morning arrived with a clarity that seemed to mirror Charlotte's new resolve. Instead of packing her suitcase for Santa Fe, she wrote a letter to her mother's cousin, explaining her decision to remain in Tucson for the time being. Xavier personally delivered it to town to be sent on the very train she had planned to board. Weeks passed, turning into months as Charlotte settled into life at Doublem Ranch. The makeshift classroom was expanded to accommodate 3 more children from neighboring homesteads. Charlotte's natural talent for teaching blossomed, and soon parents were asking if she might consider adult education lessons in the evenings. Her relationship with Xavier deepened gradually. They rode together most evenings, talking for hours about their pasts, their dreams, and the future they were beginning to envision together. He courted her properly, with Bethany serving as a cheerful chaperone, though her knowing smiles suggested she had already planned the wedding in her mind. Winter came to the Arizona territory with cool nights and mild days. On Christmas Eve, 6 months after Charlotte had first arrived at the ranch, Xavier took her on a special ride to a mesa overlooking the property. There, with the land spread out before them like a patchwork quilt, he dropped to one knee. Charlotte Kincaid, I knew from the moment I saw you sitting alone at that train station that you were someone special, he said, his voice thick with emotion. These past months have only confirmed what my heart suspected then. I love you, and I want to build a life with you here if you'll have me. He produced a ring, a simple gold band with a small diamond that caught the winter sunlight. It was my mother's, he explained. The only thing of value I managed to save after the war. Charlotte felt tears of joy streaming down her face as she answered, Yes, Xavier McCallister. Yes, I will marry you. They were wed in the spring of 1879, with the desert in full bloom around them. The entire community gathered to celebrate, turning the wedding into a 3-day festival that people would talk about for years to come. Bethany cried happily throughout the ceremony, her own upcoming nuptials to the blacksmith temporarily overshadowed by her brother's joy. As Charlotte and Xavier exchanged vows beneath an arch of desert wildflowers, she couldn't help but reflect on how close she had come to boarding that train to Santa Fe. One decision, one moment of trust in a stranger's offered hand, had altered the course of her life entirely. Their first year of marriage brought challenges, as all marriages face. A drought threatened the cattle herd, forcing Xavier to make difficult decisions about culling some animals to save the rest. Charlotte's school continued to grow, requiring more of her time and energy than she had anticipated. They learned to navigate these obstacles together, strengthening their bond in the process. In the spring of 1880, Charlotte discovered she was expecting their first child. Xavier's reaction, falling to his knees and pressing his ear to her still flat stomach, became one of her most treasured memories. Their daughter, Elizabeth, was born that November, a healthy child with her father's blue eyes and her mother's determined spirit. 2 years later, they welcomed a son, James, completing their family. The children grew up surrounded by the vastness of the Arizona landscape, learning both from books in their mother's classroom and from the practical education of ranch life with their father. By 1885, Doublem Ranch had expanded to include an additional 1,000 acres and nearly 1,000 head of cattle. Xavier's innovative breeding practices and business acumen had made him one of the most respected ranchers in the territory. Charlotte's school had evolved into a proper educational institution, with a dedicated building and 2 additional teachers to help with the growing number of students. On warm summer evenings, Xavier and Charlotte often sat on the same porch swing where they had shared their first kiss. They would watch their children playing in the yard, the sun setting behind the mountains in a blaze of orange and purple. "Do you ever regret it?" Xavier asked one such evening, his arm draped comfortably around her shoulders. "Not getting on that train to Santa Fe." Charlotte leaned into his embrace, contentment filling her heart. Not for a single moment. The woman who waited alone at that station needed someone to show her a different path. "I'm grateful every day that it was you who took my hand." Xavier pressed a kiss to her temple. "I think I fell in love with you right then, though I didn't recognize it at the time." "When did you know for certain?" she asked, curious. "The second day you were here, watching you with the children in the schoolroom," he replied without hesitation. "You belonged here so naturally, it was as if the ranch had been waiting for you all along." Charlotte smiled, remembering her own moment of certainty. "For me, it was during our ride that afternoon. Seeing your passion for this land, understanding the life you had built here, I knew then that I wanted to be part of it." As twilight deepened around them, their children's laughter echoing across the ranch yard, Charlotte marveled at how life's most significant journeys often began with the smallest steps. She had waited alone at a station, desperate and afraid, only to find that the hand extended to her in that moment of need would lead her to a love and life more fulfilling than anything she could have imagined. Xavier McCallister had promised her a new start that day, but what he had given her was so much more: a home, a family, and a love that would endure through all the seasons of their lives together. Years later, when their grandchildren begged for stories, Charlotte would always begin with the same words. "I was waiting alone at a train station, not knowing that my life was about to change forever, when a cowboy took my hand and promised me a new start." And Xavier, gray-haired but still strong, would always squeeze her hand at that part, both of them silently thanking the twist of fate that had brought them together on that dusty platform so many years ago, the moment when a lost young woman and a lonely rancher discovered that sometimes the most beautiful destinations are found when we miss the train we thought we needed to catch.